What's up, guys? About a year ago, I made a video talking about the health of Squad, and I think it's time we follow up on that video. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button, leave a like, drop a comment down below with your thoughts, and let's get to it. So first, we're going to take a very quick look back at what this year has been, and it hasn't been much in terms of content. Obviously, the elephant in the room is that the focus has been on Unreal 5's implementation into Squad, which came with the 9.0 update. The funny thing is, the first time that we talked about the Unreal 5 engine was shortly after I put out the Squad health video last October. So it's unsurprising that this was quite the undertaking, considering we really didn't get much in terms of updates since about last November, and then we were in playtesting for the Unreal 5 engine version of Squad in the late spring and summer, with the eventual release hitting at the beginning of September. And since then, we've had about 4 hotfixes. So over the course of the past year, there's just not been a lot, with the exception of the engine update, which is going to be a decent portion of this video. I think many of us played in the playtest, and some of us saw the potential that Unreal 5 could lend, but plenty of us also saw some of the concerns that were developing within the progression of the Unreal 5 engine. Merging some of the content in to create a bigger 9.0 update, like the CRF and some of the gunplay changes, obviously caused a fair amount of issues, especially in playtesting. And upon release of 9.0, things weren't exactly smooth. There's not only been performance issues of those trying to adapt to the Unreal 5 based on the equipment that they have, but there's also just been a large volume of bugs that interfere with the player's experience. And some of these things are just going on too long. For example, muzzle smoke or vehicles sinking into the ground. I mean, obviously, the quicksand is an issue that's a bug, but vehicle physics largely just don't feel completely where they need to be. Helicopter pilots are having a hell of a time just landing their helicopters because of some sort of bug attached to that. Some folks are experiencing eye adaptation issues while in-game. For example, walking from a dark room to outside, it's very hard to see initially, or it's just impossible to see outside the dark room. It's hard to know every single bug that players are faced with. I know that there's some kit issues and other things that have affected folks, maybe not as prominently or as frequently as some other things. But I'm primarily looking at the things that affect almost everybody across the board all of the time. And some of these just haven't seen the sort of urgency to get fixed that I think many of us were hoping for. Now we should touch on performance issues. Obviously, there's going to be a wide array of performance issues when it comes to the game, dependent largely on hardware. I think largely my performance has been okay with Unreal 5, and I just say okay in a scale that could go above that. It didn't necessarily give me more frames, but I don't know that that was my expectation going in. I expected a smoother performance, but that's not always a consistent thing. There are times where the performance begins to suffer. Is that related to certain maps, the foliage, or whatever is going on in that moment that affects performance? I mean, I was on Sanction Islands, which I was hoping would run better with Unreal 5, and the Russian motorized group rolls out of Maine on an invasion round, and as soon as all those guns start firing, I got 20 frames. I think the big thing is that performance largely feels just like a work in progress. Frankly, I don't think we'll ever get to a point where performance feels like it meets the expectation that maybe some of us had in terms of overall performance and how it performs for people across the board on a consistent level. Unfortunately, with this, it is one of those scenarios where people are probably going to be left out of playing Squad due to hardware. And I know that server owners have been making some significant investments into trying to make sure their equipment runs the game effectively for the player base, but that comes with investments. I'm just not sure the general community looks at Squad and says the changes that were made with Unreal 5, like lighting and some of the vehicle stuff, while all feeling very much a work in progress, has sort of offset the issues that may come with Unreal 5 in terms of bugs and performance issues. Like, the selling point is not there yet with where we are in Unreal 5 and the changes made. Now let's go to another topic that's near and dear to me to some extent because I've made videos trying to teach players, and that is that, again, we still have no onboarding or training methods for new players. I mean, you can learn hotkeys and things like that, but when it comes to specifics around game modes, I just don't feel like there's anything available. The route that Squad tends to be on is training by playing with people that have experience, more advanced players being in the game to help guide some of these new players. And with the volume of free weekends and sales, that happens, but it stresses the advanced players. Like, the community of folks that have hours in Squad all have a similar sigh when they see a free weekend or a significant sale because we know the expectation. You have advanced players trying to hop on to enjoy the game experience that they love, yet they're met with poor games because of all the new players, and they're having to help new players out, or they meet resistance from new players because, again, there's just not enough there to get everybody up to speed in a format that I think is entertaining. Like, the tutorial isn't going to do enough. Jensen's doesn't offer enough. And this is where I think the advancements with bots needs to come in at some point. There comes a time where advanced players begin to get really frustrated because they're having to consistently teach in the absence of something foundational to be within the game to do some of that work for them. Now throw in the opportunity to encounter a few bugs, performance issues, or something along those lines that really begin to hurt the experience. And for new players coming in off the sale or the free weekend, they're not even getting a good experience because they're playing something that they may not fully understand or grasp the mechanics of. They're diving into something where advanced players are already frustrated, all within a game experience that's just already a mess. So rounds go poorly, and it's kind of up to the new player to decide, do I want to continue to play? And sometimes that's not going to be a yes. And if you have new players having to take on the role of squad leader out of necessity, they don't know how to do some of the basic things in a way that are very effective. They're learning from scratch. I can't tell you how many games I've watched more recently in the last few months where the decision making is just perplexing. And a lot of it's because there's new players or players that other players are having to account for in some way. Like, oh, they're not going to do the fob building, I've got to do it. But in reality, maybe that squad's like the best attack squad. Then you end up in a stalemate because just nobody knows what to do. And a lot of this comes down to in-game experience, which I just don't feel like we have the same abundance of that we used to. And that lack in the abundance of skilled or advanced players with ours can be due to a few different things. But one of those things can be content and the game growing stale. The most recent new map we've had implemented into the game, brand new map, was Sanction Islands that came out, I think, in February 2024. And looking back at it, we really haven't seen a new faction added since September 2024 with the WPMCs. And I'm not counting the Canadian Resistance Force because that is almost like a reskin of the WPMCs. Another thing to tie into this is map voting and faction voting has sort of decreased the variety of things played. People want to play their favorite map, maybe with a faction that they like so they can get a specific vehicle or whatever. It tends to just narrow the scope of things that are selected. Then we can jump to game modes where you're going to have the majority of games obviously played in Random Advanced and Secure. You're going to throw in some invasion here and there, maybe some Advanced and Secure, and then Skirmish and TC are going to get a very limited look. And speaking of Skirmish, that's the game mode that actually saw official attention from Offworld, but the implementation just does not make sense to me. While Random Advanced and Secure is going to draw the most votes or most interest from the community to play, it's also flawed within itself because it doesn't have the variety necessary to be the mainstay. Like, you're still going to run into limitations on how much you can play Random Advanced and Secure before it basically becomes AAS because you've played it so many times. Now, I know that we're looking at an update in version 10 that comes with Ukraine, potentially the Eastern European biome rework, which I'm very interested to see more on. I just don't see Ukraine being that significant of a pull for the game because a lot of the assets are shared. Like, I do hope that the new faction, maybe the Eastern European biome rework, can bring a little bit of life, but I don't think it's going to be a ton. Now, there's something else that's grown stale, and that is just general gameplay, because I've noticed something over the last year or so that seems to be more prominent than it was before, and that is stalemates within games. Just repeated failed attacks that turn into just both teams playing very conservatively. It happens, it's going to happen, but I just think it's happening a lot, like a limited amount of habs and fobs being built, especially for the attack. Logistics movement has generally slowed in game, and I'm not sure entirely what that's because of. I do realize teams are less likely to take risks, and with inconsistencies in sound, I feel like lodges, and especially track lodges, are getting heard out earlier than we're accustomed to, reducing the ability to sneak in that sneaky fob for an attack. It almost feels like we just don't have as many lodges available at any given time. Some of that could be battle group related, but it also goes back to player education, knowing how to use that vehicle properly, and of course, teams just not willing to take certain risks. And of course, there are things in the game now that are going to deter teams from trying to do stuff like drones, which we don't have a direct counter for at the moment. It just seems like teams are less willing to take chances. A lot of times it just comes down to the battle group choice and getting the team to work together into the battle group strengths. And simultaneously, when it comes to battle groups, I think a lot of the changes made just feel kind of chaotic because with every update, there's some adjustment to numbers or delays, timers, etc. And if I could touch on timers for a moment, at the end of the day, a player getting onto squad just wants to play the game. They want to play the vehicle that they want to play on the map that they want to play as the faction they want to play. Not every server is going to have name claims, so they have to sit there and wait to get the first come, first served. It's an awkward experience. But having these long delays on certain things just seem to inhibit the opportunity to play and have fun. And at the end of the day, we need a little bit of that back in the game. I just think some of these timers, especially stuff with like helicopters and pilots waiting 10 minutes to get a heli, it's just hurting gameplay because it's reducing the fun that folks can have. They don't want to wait that long. And I think this also ties into some aspects of gunplay. We saw some tweaks to gunplay. I think it's better, especially in short range, but I also think that now pulling up your weapon, especially with a scope to ADS, just feels like I'm still waiting on a mechanic to catch up with me. And to some extent, that's how Squad tends to feel lately, is that there's all these mechanics in place to adjust gameplay a certain way, almost artificially, that I feel like I'm waiting on the game to catch up. And if we zoom out, I think a lot of us are waiting on Offworld to catch up. And speaking of Offworld, where do we go from here? And I think a lot of us are looking for a sense of urgency from Offworld. I don't think it's some secret that the player count has dropped a little bit, especially in the last few months. And folks are looking for fixes since 9.0. Folks are looking for fixes generally. Folks want performance updates. There's a lot right now to be desired in the Squad experience. And unfortunately, it also seems like a lot of the changes made over the last couple years aren't necessarily making Squad more replayable or better or more fun in the long run. So what do I think Squad needs pretty quickly? First would be bug fixes, addressing some of the larger things that are affecting a large portion of the community. Try to get those things remedied to improve the player experience. I can understand if a lot of the performance things that need to be implemented into Squad is going to take a longer period of time. That certainly won't appease everyone, but at the same time, playing with bugs and performance issues isn't great. We need more variety. And one of the things I hear most often from server owners is more server-side control. I think largely this could affect map voting, tailoring certain things to an experience that they want to create on their specific server. Mods like Squad Admin Tools gives servers more options and things that they can do. It would be good to see stuff like that implemented into the game itself for server owners, again, to curate their experience. I think tied to this could also be removing some of the biome and alliance restrictions. Because again, we need variety, we need options, and this limits that. And right now, we don't have the luxury of having a significant amount of updates providing us new content, new things to play. So in the absence of that, give us the option to create different experiences on the day-to-day with what we have. Now, I've talked a little bit about some game mode updates and reworks. We've most recently talked a lot about the skirmish mode that was implemented with 9.0 that just doesn't make sense. And I think we still need to see a refresh of other game modes to continue adding to the variety that we can play. I mean, random, advanced, and secure being played so much just needs some additional elements, some additional variety to keep it a little bit fresh. So whether that means we need additional layers that use the lanes differently or something, we need something to continue to provide the different experiences you could possibly get while playing the same maps. These are just a few things off the top of my head. I do wish to see something where we have a proper bug report system where the community can submit bugs and maybe track some of the progress on some of the key elements that need to be fixed in game. Squad needs a lot of attention. Another update with content won't remedy the longer term issues that I think the game faces to make it a better experience from a player perspective. And I say that as someone who's met with the developers. I understand a lot of the things that they want to accomplish, but we've got to somehow figure out a way to prioritize some of the things that are most problematic when it comes to gameplay. Because at the end of the day, you can bring on new players, you can add content, but if the gameplay is not good, the attention span won't be there. Especially not to wait it out to see when you will fix it. Not this day and age. So that wraps up a lot of the points that I wanted to make about Squad's health, because right now I don't think it's in great shape. This is a game that many of us have come to love. In the comments that you make on my videos referring to issues or the things that you're excited about just show the passion that's in the community for the game, but we all need to see it improve. Real quick, special shout out to those in ODT and some friends for providing some clips and some ideas for what to add into this video. I hope that you found this video interesting. I hope there's some talking points that I'll see in the comments. And of course, as always, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, drop a comment down below with any of those thoughts you have, and I'll see you all next time.